I'm sorry, there was some problem with my internet. Now look, Jupiter. So Juno transforms Tiresias into a blind man. Now Jupiter cannot undo Juno's doing. So what does he do? He gives Tiresias the power of prophecy as a compensation. So as time passes, Tiresias is praised by everyone for his ability to predict the future, his oracular abilities. And when the nymph Liriope is raped by the river god Cephissus, she turns to Tiresias to find out the fate of her new child. And Tiresias answers that if the child does not know himself, then nobody will find out what he exactly means. And 16 years later, her child, Narcissus, has matured into a handsome young man who is loved by both men and women because of his handsomeness. But Narcissus is really not interested to talk about or to deal with anybody. So he is very much enmeshed in himself, engrossed in himself. And one day, when he is out chasing a deer in the forest, he meets with the nymph called Echo. Now, Echo can only repeat what the other people say, but she cannot initiate a conversation herself. Now, Ovid once again shifts the focus by telling us why Echo is such a woman. And it turns out that Echo used to act as a side nymph or as a wing nymph for the other nymphs who were there with Jupiter, who were Jupiter's bedmates. And every time Juno came along looking for her husband, Echo would stand in her way and engage in conversation to kind of stop her for the time being, so that Jupiter could save his face and so that her friends could get away with the act. But when Echo sees Narcissus roaming through the woods, basically she falls in love with him. And since she cannot initiate any conversation, she waits for him to speak first. Time passes, and one day Narcissus is once again out wandering in the woods, and somehow he gets separated from his retinue. And Narcissus is worried, so he calls out for his friends, that is anyone nearby. And Echo replies nearby. And Narcissus says, come, come. And Echo repeats that. Finally, Narcissus says, let's meet. And she replies, let's meet. At that moment, Echo runs out to meet with him. But when Narcissus sees her, as he is not interested in any man or any woman, he basically shuns her and runs away. And Echo is absolutely full of grief and she erodes away, slowly wastes away. Soon nothing is left of her body, but only her voice remains. Meanwhile, Narcissus basically goes about his daily life where everybody falls in love with him and he rejects all of them. Finally, one of those men who is rejected by Narcissus prays that Narcissus himself will feel the pain that he has inflicted on others. And as a result, one day while he is wandering in the forest, he comes to a pool of still water and he kneels to take a drink. And on the surface of the pool, he sees his own shadow, his own reflection, and falls in love with it. He becomes so fixated on his own image in the pool that he spends long hours gazing on it, not even bothering to eat or drink. Eventually, He finds out that it is his own image, but he really does not care. He's too much in love with himself. And he keeps lying there and moping. And Echo is nearby and she echoes his groans. Soon enough, Narcissus dies and his spirit goes down to Hades, the hell, where it keeps staring at its own reflection in a pool of water, and his body turns into the flower of Narcissus. Now, as sad as this story is, it increases Tiresias's reputation as a seer, as a future teller. The only one who does not respect Tiresias in the entire world is Pentheus, the prince of Thebes, who makes fun of him for going blind. In response, Tiresias prophesies that Pentheus will be killed for disrespecting the god Bacchus. And shortly afterward, Bacchus, the god from Jupiter and Simile, so Bacchus comes to town, and all the women of the town instantly become frantic devotees of Bacchus, participating in wild, chaotic festivities. When you will be learning about Keats, you will learn about these women who are called Maenads, the worshippers of Bacchus. Now, Pentheus does not like this attitude of the women towards Bacchus, and he orders his men to go and capture Bacchus and to bring him back in chains. And Cadmus, his grandfather, and others try to dissuade him. But all this dissuasion makes him even more angry and more determined that he wants to do this. So he sends his men, and soon the men return with a captive. But this captive is not a god, not Bacchus, but a man who claims to be Aquatis or Aeetes. And Aeetes now tells his own story. He says that he is a sailor, the son of a poor fisherman, and one day when he and his men landed on the coast of Chios, they found a young boy on the shore and took him captive. Now, something told Aquatis that the boy was a god in disguise, and he prayed to the boy to forgive them for capturing him. But then the other sailors started laughing and told Aquatis to stop it. Now, Aquatis tried and failed to get them to see reason. And the boy, who was actually the god Bacchus, told them that he wanted to be dropped off at the island of Naxos. The crew members, they told Aquatis that we will not go towards Naxos, we will go the other way. Eventually, Bacchus got angry and tired of everyone on the ship and revealed his true identity. And he made the ship stand still in mid-sea, and he wreathed all its masts with grapevines. At the same time, he transformed all the crewmen into dolphins except Aquatis. This is basically the story of Aquatis. There the story ends. What is the moral? Respect Bacchus. Do not disrespect the god, because he will make you into a dolphin or do something like that. But Pentheus is not having any of this. Instead, he orders his men to take Aquatis to the dungeons and torture him to death. But what he does not know is that once they get there, the doors mysteriously open up, they burst open, and the chains slip away from Aquatis and he escapes. But Pentheus's most ignorant decision comes next. He climbs up the mountain to see that what the women are doing in their crazy state, in their enthusiastic state in honor of the god Bacchus. And when he gets there, his mother, Agave, catches him. Unfortunately, she has been driven into a frenzy and she mistakes Pentheus to be a wild boar. And she leads all the women, Agave leads all the women to hunt this wild boar. So the women catch him and they tear him up from limb to limb. And Agave deals the final blow by ripping his head off. So here the third book ends. So you see there are six stories. I have told you the six stories in some detail, more or less. And I have dealt with the stories as best as I could. But now look, this book begins very auspiciously with the founding of Thebes. However, soon the foundation is replaced by divine anger, divine rage, and divine revenge. And nearly every single major character is punished for a crime, regardless of whether the crime was committed knowingly or unknowingly. Diana punishes Actaeon for accidentally stumbling upon her when she was naked. Juno punishes Semele for her love affair with Jupiter. She also punishes Tiresias with blindness for agreeing with Jupiter. Bacchus punishes Pentheus for for failing to worship him. So, by focusing on the theme of the revenge, Ovid brings in a comparison with Virgil's Aeneid, which portrays Aeneas's quest to establish a city and Juno's resulting wrath. Now, Ovid basically goes a step beyond Virgil because in Virgil, the sole villain was Juno. In Ovid, three divine figures damn the household of Cadmus and the founding of Thebes. They are Diana, Juno, and Bacchus. Now, each act of revenge is accompanied by an ironic twist at the expense of the victim. Actaeon, a hunter, becomes hunted, and the reversal is completed when Actaeon's own dogs tear him apart. Semele is killed by the very act of intercourse through which she came to be with Zeus. She is slain by her lover's overwhelming power. So, when she wants to be loved like the queen of the gods, she is killed by his overwhelming powers. Tiresias' extensive knowledge causes his blindness. Narcissus, who was rejected by all his suitors, is also rejected by himself. So he becomes both the subject and object of his spurned love. Pentheus' death is ironic for many reasons. Number one, his threat to kill Aquatis is turned against him when he himself is killed for impiety. Number two, the Bacchus worshippers uh, take him for an animal because considering that Pentheus is not an animal or even a transformed animal, as are many other characters in the poem who are mistaken to be animals, is very ironic. Finally, despite his refusal to worship Bacchus, Pentheus becomes a central figure in the rites of worship and he is sacrificed by the hands of his own mother and his own aunt. So, you see, therefore, this becomes a very, very interesting and important uh, phase in the book where we get to see a lot of developments. And these developments are very, very important in our understanding of the text itself. Now, look, one thing has puzzled me whether only Bacchus is there in your syllabus or the entire tale. And I am not sure which one is the actual thing. So, I have taught you all the six stories. I have dealt with those stories as best as I could. And I think I have been able to give you some answers, at least, if not all. So I shall talk a little bit more about this and I'll conclude because this is becoming a very long lecture. Look, in this book, apart from the theme of metamorphosis, apart from the theme of transformation, Ovid talks about transgression as well in all the episodes and the dangers of transgression. What happens when a boundary is crossed? Sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally. Similarly, a human sleeping with a god, a married god, Jupiter. Actaeon, a man stumbling into a virgin's inner chambers. Tiresias living both as a man and a woman, offering his verdict on pleasure and sexuality from the perspective of both. And Pentheus, the unwilling participant of a divine rites. The result of each of these transgressions or crossings of boundary, whether uh, it is willingly or unwillingly, it brings us back to Ovid's motto, his dictum: do not call someone happy until he dies and his funeral is over. So when people cross boundaries, the result is blindness, death by sex, death by dogs, or an equally horrible fate. Now, while Thebes is founded happily, its subsequent history quickly grows very grim. And as I said, that this book begins the phase of the divine revenge. So this is a very important uh, feature in this regard. And therefore, the metamorphosis here is not just a metamorphosis of just a transformation, but it shows the impacts of transgression as well. I do not think I can speak more on this topic. So, with this, I end this lecture. Thank you so much for listening. I hope it has helped you. If there are any questions, I'll be very happy to take them up. Please put them in the comment section. I'll answer them when I see them. Thank you so much. Good night.